yesterday. I covered the period in the second lecture, as you know, from 1980-81 to 90-91, and I gave an account of what went on during that period, in particular the fiscal profligacy and borrowing from private capital markets abroad that had not happened before to the extent that happened during that period. And that fiscal profligacy had ended up with close to 9.4% of GDP as the consolidated gross fiscal deficit of the center and states.
Can you make closer?
Yeah.
You have to make it
Oh, closer. Okay. So when the Iraq War and the associated impact on India, so on three basic fronts. One is, of course, the oil prices. We are an oil importer, not the significant oil importer, and so the oil prices, going up, had a major impact on our balance of payments. Second thing is, as you know, many of our workers had gone to the West Asia for work, and once the Iraq War hit, that had its implication. And for one, we had to repatriate some of them from the war-affected countries back to India, and of course their remittances were affected as well. So we had a major impact of the Iraq War, first Iraq War, I'm talking about, on India. That's one aspect of it that was important on India. So with these as the background, as soon as the crisis hit, we had other problems as well. One is the fact that our external reserves had fallen so drastically that the reserves were no more than 2 weeks worth of imports. The external, you remember I mentioned that we had borrowed from private capital markets abroad, and so then that brings in our credit rating, and our credit rating was downgraded by the credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor, and the usual suspects. So our credit rating went down. Okay, so the situation was so dire, we had to take our gold stock abroad and pledge it to avoid immediate default on our foreign debt. So that was the situation the country was faced with. To give some numbers, the external debt in 1991 was of the order of 71 billion. It had quadrupled over the previous 10-year period from 80-81 on, of which 23 billion were owed to the private capital market. And so this share, 25% share in the external debt, this is unprecedented. As I mentioned, until the 80s, most of our external debt was to the multilateral agencies. Okay? So given this crisis, it had to be addressed, and I mentioned also the political crisis in the previous 2 years at the center with three prime ministers, several jokers in between, and after Rajiv Gandhi. And then eventually, in the 1991 election, after Rajiv's assassination, the Narasimha Rao government came to power. Note, Narasimha Rao government was a minority government. It was not the Congress majority governments that had been in place for a long time and in the parliament. And with Dr. Manmohan Singh as the finance minister. And so reform, we had to change. So we had to act. We had to change is another matter. We had to act right away. And as I said, gold stock was taken out to pledge and be able to meet the immediate crisis. Growth rate, which had, as I mentioned, accelerated during the previous 10 years. It had reached around in the year before the crisis, it was about 5.29%. And that already had reflected part of the Iraq war and all that. And it fell in the crisis year, 1/4 of it, 1.43%. That was the dimension, growth dimension, growth slowdown dimension, or growth collapse dimension of the crisis of 1991.